The starport of Velthar Prime buzzed with activity as ships from across the galaxy descended through the purple clouds. Deho stood at the registration terminal, his worn jacket drawing stares from the elegantly dressed aliens around him. He was used to the looks. Humans always got them in places like this. The Vrelton official behind the counter barely glanced at him. Her crystalline body reflected the station's lights in rainbow patterns as she processed entries for the Tournament of Ascension. When Deho stepped forward, she finally looked up. Her faceted eyes widened slightly. "Species?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer and found it amusing. "Human," Deho replied simply. A ripple of laughter spread through the nearby crowd. A massive Carthax warrior, his 8 arms covered in ceremonial battle scars, chittered something in his native tongue. The translation device on Deho's wrist converted it. "The soft ones think they can fight." Deho ignored him. He had learned long ago that words meant nothing in the arena. Only results mattered. The official's expression shifted to something between pity and confusion. "You understand what this tournament requires? Single combat against the galaxy's greatest warriors. The prize is marriage to Princess Nari and governorship of a sector." She paused. "Many will die." "I understand," Deho said. He placed his registration fee on the counter, credits earned from 3 years of fighting in the underground pits of Titan's mining colonies. The official processed his entry with obvious reluctance. As the confirmation appeared on her screen, she shook her crystalline head. "Your medical waiver is recorded. May your ancestors guide you to a swift end." Deho walked away from the counter, feeling the weight of 100 alien stares. He had expected this. Humans were the newest species in the Galactic Imperium, discovered only 30 years ago. In that time, they had been classified as a labor species, useful for work in environments too harsh for more valuable races, but too weak for positions of real power. The Grand Plaza outside the registration center offered a view of the tournament grounds below. Massive floating arenas hung suspended over the city, their energy shields shimmering in the afternoon light. Holographic displays showed highlights from previous tournaments, warriors of incredible power destroying each other in spectacular battles. "You must be very brave or very stupid." Deho turned to find a young Illurian watching him. The alien's perfect features and graceful movements marked him as one of the engineered elite, a species designed for superiority. This one wore the silver insignia of a tournament competitor. "Maybe both," Deho answered. The Illurian smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "I am Talvor, Prince of House Illurian. I have trained my entire life for this tournament. My genetics have been optimized across 20 generations." He looked Deho up and down. "What advantages does your species possess? You seem rather ordinary." "We are," Deho admitted. "No natural weapons, no armored skin. We break easily and heal slowly." He met Talvor's gaze. "But we are very good at not dying." Talvor laughed, a musical sound. "Curious. Well, I hope we do not face each other too early. It would be disappointing to end your tournament in the first round." He walked away, his movements impossibly fluid. Deho made his way to the designated quarters for tournament participants. The room assigned to him was small but functional, with a view of the city sprawl below. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out a small data tablet, reviewing information he had gathered over the past months. Princess Nari, third in line to the Galactic throne. 26 standard years old, educated in 17 fields of study. Required by ancient Vreltan law to marry the winner of the Tournament of Ascension. The images showed a being of crystalline beauty, her body formed of interlocking transparent structures that shifted colors with her moods. But Deho had not entered the tournament for her. He thought of the mining colonies, of human children born into servitude, of families separated and sent to different systems based on labor quotas. The prize for winning included governorship of a sector. With that power, he could change the classification of humans from labor species to citizens. He could give his people a future. The terminal in his room chimed. A message appeared, summoning all competitors to the opening ceremony in 2 hours. Deho stood and stripped off his jacket, examining his reflection in the mirror. Scars covered his torso and arms, souvenirs from 3 years of pit fighting. His knuckles were permanently swollen, his nose had been broken twice, and a long scar ran from his left shoulder to his ribs. He looked exactly like what he was, a fighter from the bottom levels of society, someone who had survived by being tougher than his circumstances. The opening ceremony took place in the largest arena, with seating for over 1 million spectators. Daeho stood with the other competitors on the central platform as the crowd roared. There were 32 fighters in total, representing the most dangerous species in the Imperium. High above them, a private viewing box opened, and Princess Nari appeared. Even from this distance, Daeho could see her clearly on the massive holographic displays. She moved with the grace expected of royalty, her crystalline form draped in flowing garments that seemed to be made of liquid light. Competitors of the Tournament of Ascension, her voice echoed through the arena, translated instantly into every known language. You fight for the honor of my hand and the right to govern, but know this, I do not seek a conqueror. The warrior who claims victory must prove not only strength but worth. Her gaze swept across the assembled fighters. For just a moment, Daeho felt her attention pause on him, though he could not be certain. The master of ceremonies, an ancient Vreltan whose body had begun to show the clouding that came with extreme age, stepped forward. The tournament begins tomorrow at dawn. Matches will be assigned by random selection. Combat continues until one fighter yields, is unable to continue, or dies. There are no other rules. That night, Daeho stood on the balcony of his quarters, watching the city lights below. His wrist communicator buzzed with a message from home. From the colony on Titan. His younger sister had sent it. We heard you entered the tournament. Everyone here thinks you are crazy, but we are proud of you anyway. Come home safe, big brother. Daeho smiled and sent a simple reply. I will try. He knew the odds. Humans had never won a major combat tournament. They had never even come close. Every biological metric said he should lose in the first round. The smart move would be to withdraw, to go back to the pits where he at least had a chance. But Daeho had not come here to be smart. He had come here to fight for something bigger than himself. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see what a human could do when he had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The first morning of the tournament arrived with crimson light filtering through Velthar Prime's dual suns. Daeho woke before dawn, his body already tense with anticipation. He performed his usual routine, stretching exercises, shadow boxing, mental preparation, the same rituals that had kept him alive in the pits. The match assignments appeared on his terminal at exactly sunrise. His first opponent, Kratok the Destroyer, a Thurkian berserker with a record of 43 kills in arena combat. The accompanying file showed a creature nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick green scales, with acidic blood that could melt through most metals. Daeho studied the footage carefully. Kratok fought with pure aggression, overwhelming opponents with savage strength. The Thurkian had never needed strategy because nothing had ever survived his initial assault. 3 hours later, Daeho stood in the preparation chamber beneath Arena 7. Through the energy field, he could hear the crowd's roar. Humans made up less than a fraction of a percent of the audience, but he knew some were watching from the colonies, gathered around whatever screens they could access. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Our first match of the day features Kratok the Destroyer, undefeated champion of the Thurkian death matches against... A pause, then a barely concealed laugh. Daeho, a human from the Titan colonies. The crowd's reaction was a mix of laughter and confused murmurs. Betting displays showed odds of 300 to 1 against Daeho's survival. The energy field dropped. Daeho walked onto the white sand of the arena floor, squinting against the bright lights. Across from him, Kratok emerged from the opposite entrance, his massive form casting a shadow that stretched halfway across the arena. The Thurkian roared, displaying rows of razor-sharp teeth. His claws extended with a metallic click. The crowd cheered wildly. Daeho said nothing. He simply watched, measuring the distance, calculating angles. The starting bell rang. Kratok charged immediately, exactly as Deho had expected. The ground shook with each thundering step. Most fighters would have frozen or tried to meet the charge head-on. Deho did neither. He moved laterally, using the arena's gravity wells, circular zones where gravity intensified by 30%. The Thurkian's charge carried him past Deho's position. Kratok skidded on the sand, confused by the lack of impact. He spun, searching for his prey. Deho had already moved again, staying light on his feet, conserving energy. The crowd's laughter had stopped. This was not the quick slaughter they had expected. Kratok roared in frustration and charged again. This time, Deho timed his movement perfectly, rolling aside just as the Thurkian entered a gravity well. The increased weight slowed Kratok's momentum, causing him to stumble slightly. It was a small mistake, but Deho exploited it instantly. He struck at Kratok's knee joint, the one spot not fully protected by scales. The blow would not have hurt most species seriously, but it accomplished Deho's goal. It made Kratok angry. An angry fighter is a careless fighter. The next 5 minutes became a lesson in patience versus rage. Kratok pursued Deho around the arena, his attacks growing wilder and more predictable. Deho stayed just out of reach, occasionally landing small strikes that did minimal damage but maximum frustration. The crowd's mood shifted. Some began to cheer for Deho, fascinated by his unusual strategy. Kratok's breathing grew heavier. His species was built for explosive power, not endurance. Meanwhile, Deho maintained a steady pace, his human cardiovascular system designed for persistence rather than sprints. Finally, Kratok made the critical error. Exhausted and furious, he committed fully to a devastating overhead strike. Deho waited until the last possible moment, then moved. The Thurkian's claws struck the arena floor, sinking deep into the sand. In that moment of vulnerability, Deho acted. He grabbed one of Kratok's extended arms and twisted, using the creature's own momentum against him. The Thurkian stumbled forward, off balance. Deho did not try to overpower him. Instead, he guided Kratok's fall toward one of the gravity wells. The increased weight combined with the Thurkian's momentum sent him crashing face-first into the sand. Before Kratok could recover, Deho was on his back, applying a chokehold he had learned in the pits. The angle prevented the Thurkian from using his superior strength effectively. Kratok thrashed, but each movement only tightened the hold. His acidic blood dripped onto the sand, but Deho had positioned himself carefully to avoid it. Seconds stretched into a minute. The Thurkian's movements grew weaker. Finally, Kratok slapped the ground 3 times, the universal sign of surrender. Deho released the hold immediately and stepped back. The crowd sat in stunned silence for 3 heartbeats, then erupted in chaos. Half cheered wildly, the other half shouted in disbelief. Kratok rose slowly, shaking his massive head. He looked at Deho with something resembling respect, then walked from the arena without a word. Deho returned to his preparation chamber, his entire body shaking with adrenaline. He had won. Against all odds, against a creature designed for killing, he had won. But he had no time to celebrate. The tournament structure meant he would fight again tomorrow. That evening, as Deho treated his minor injuries in his quarters, his terminal chimed with an unexpected message. It was an official summons to the Imperial viewing box. He arrived to find Princess Nari alone, watching holographic replays of the day's matches. She turned as he entered, her crystalline features reflecting the blue light of the displays. "You fought well today," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "Thank you, Your Highness." Deho bowed, unsure of the proper protocol. "I have been reviewing your file. You come from the labor colonies." It was not a question. "Why enter a tournament you cannot win?" Deho met her fasted eyes. "Who says I cannot win?" A ripple of color passed through her crystalline body, something that might have been amusement. Every biological analysis, every statistical model, every expert in the Imperium. "They said the same thing before today's match," Deho replied. "Kratok was supposed to kill me in under a minute. Instead, he surrendered." Nari studied him with an intensity that felt like being examined under a microscope. You did not defeat him with strength. You exhausted him, made him defeat himself. That is what humans do best, Deho said. We survive. We adapt. We find ways to win that others do not consider. Why? Nari asked. Why risk your life for this? The governorship? The status? Freedom, Deho answered simply. There are children being born in the colonies right now who will never see anything but mine shafts and processing plants. They will live and die as labor units because the galaxy decided humans are only useful for dangerous work. His hands clenched into fists. If I win, I can change that classification. I can give them futures. Nari was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, You are either very noble or very foolish to believe one tournament can change the structure of the Imperium. Maybe both, Deho replied, echoing his earlier words to Talvor. Another color ripple passed through Nari's body, deeper this time. Your next opponent is Slickstar, a Veyron assassin. Her venom can kill most species in seconds. How do you plan to survive that? Deho smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. I will find a way. I always do. As he left the viewing box, Deho did not see the way Princess Nari continued to watch him, her crystalline fingers tracing patterns of thought on the railing. Back in his quarters, Deho prepared for tomorrow's fight. He reviewed footage of Slickstar, noting her speed, her preferred striking patterns, the way her tail carried the venomous barb. Sleep came slowly. When it finally arrived, Deho dreamed of home, of his sister, of children playing in sunlight instead of laboring in darkness. The tournament had only begun. 2 weeks had passed since the tournament began. Of the original 32 competitors, only 4 remained. Deho stood among them, battered but alive. Each victory had seemed impossible, yet each time he had found a way. Against Slickstar and her deadly venom, he had worn her down through constant movement, forcing her to waste her poison on near misses until her reserves depleted. Against the psychic Valen warrior who could read thoughts, Deho had filled his mind with chaos, random memories and songs and nonsense, creating mental static that disrupted the telepathic attacks. The galaxy watched in growing fascination. Betting odds had shifted dramatically. Deho was no longer the joke, the soft human who would die quickly. He had become something else, the underdog who refused to lose. His semi-final opponent was Talvor, the Illurian prince who had spoken to him on that first day. The match was scheduled for dawn, and Deho spent the night before in meditation, knowing this would be his hardest fight yet. Talvor represented perfection. His species had engineered themselves across 20 generations, eliminating weakness, enhancing every physical attribute. He was faster than Deho, stronger, more agile. His reflexes operated at 3 times human speed. In every measurable category, Talvor was superior. As the Crimson Suns rose over Velthar Prime, Deho walked into the arena for what the commentators were calling the most anticipated match of the tournament. The crowd numbered in the millions now, with billions more watching across the galaxy. Princess Nari sat in the Imperial box, her crystalline form leaning forward slightly. Over the past weeks, she had watched every one of Deho's matches. She had begun to understand what her advisors could not. This human fought with something beyond physical ability. He fought with purpose. Talvor entered from the opposite side, his perfect features calm and confident. He wore minimal armor, his engineered body his greatest weapon. As they met in the center of the arena, he offered Deho a respectful nod. You have surprised everyone, Talvor said, but this is where your journey ends. I have analyzed your fighting style, your patterns, your strategies. I am better than you in every way. You probably are, Deho admitted. On paper, you should win easily. Then why do you smile? Talvor asked. Because fights are not won on paper, Deho replied. The starting bell rang. Talvor moved like liquid lightning. His first strike came so fast that Deho barely deflected it. The second caught him in the ribs, sending him stumbling back. The third would have ended the match if Deho had not rolled aside at the last instant. The crowd roared as Talvor demonstrated his superiority. For 5 minutes, it was not even close. The Illyrian prince landed blow after blow, each one calculated for maximum impact. Daeho's defense was purely reactionary, barely keeping him conscious. Blood ran from Daeho's nose, his lip, a cut above his eye. His ribs screamed with pain. But he stayed standing, kept moving, refused to fall. Talvor paused, slightly confused. By now, any other opponent would have been unconscious or dead. Yet the human remained on his feet, eyes still focused, still fighting. You should surrender, Talvor said, not unkindly. There is no shame in acknowledging a superior opponent. Daeho spat blood onto the sand. Not yet. The fight continued. Talvor's attacks remained precise, powerful, perfect. But something began to change. His breathing, which had been controlled and steady, started to quicken. His strikes, while still devastating, came fractionally slower. Daeho noticed. He had been counting, tracking, measuring. Talvor had been engineered for peak performance, but peak performance over what duration? The Illyrians designed themselves for decisive victories. Their matches never lasted more than 10 minutes. They were 15 minutes in now. Daeho adjusted his strategy. Instead of just defending, he began to make Talvor work harder. He moved more unpredictably, forced the Illyrian to chase him, to extend his attacks. Each movement cost Talvor energy. Energy his perfect body was not accustomed to managing over extended periods. At 20 minutes, Talvor's hands began to shake, almost imperceptibly. His perfect control started to crack. This should not be happening. His body had never experienced true exhaustion before. Daeho, meanwhile, had lived in exhaustion for years. The pits of Titan, the labor colonies, the endless fights for survival. His body knew how to function past its limits. Pain was an old friend. Fatigue was a familiar companion. At 25 minutes, Talvor's attacks had slowed to merely twice human speed instead of 3 times. His breathing came in gasps. Confusion showed in his perfect eyes. How was this happening? Daeho struck back for the first time, landing a solid hit to Talvor's midsection. The Illyrian stumbled, shocked by the impact. Your engineers made you perfect, Daeho said, his voice rough but steady. But they forgot one thing. They never taught you how to suffer. The crowd had gone silent, witnessing something unprecedented. The perfect being was faltering while the fragile human endured. At 30 minutes, Talvor collapsed to one knee. Not from injury, but from sheer exhaustion his body did not know how to process. His engineered muscles, never pushed beyond their optimal performance window, simply began to shut down. Daeho stood over him, swaying but upright. He extended a hand. Yield. You fought well. Talvor looked at the offered hand with something like wonder. In that moment, he understood what Daeho had known from the beginning. Perfection was brittle. It excelled in ideal conditions, but shattered under sustained hardship. I yield, Talvor whispered, taking Daeho's hand. The arena exploded with noise. Half the crowd screamed in disbelief, the other half in triumph. Daeho had done the impossible again. The human had defeated genetic perfection through nothing but stubborn refusal to quit. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. Talvor was carried off, his body in shock from an experience it had never been designed to handle. Daeho waved away the medics and walked off on his own power, though every step was agony. That night, Daeho sat in the medical bay, stitching a cut on his arm. He preferred to handle his own injuries when possible. The advanced medical technology made him uncomfortable, made him feel dependent. The door opened without warning. Princess Nari entered. Alone, without guards or attendants. This breached every protocol. You should not be here, Your Highness, Daeho said, not looking up from his work. I wanted to understand, Nari replied, moving closer. How do you do it? Every match you should lose. Every opponent is stronger, faster, more powerful. Yet you win. Daeho tied off the stitch and finally met her eyes. Because I have to. Because there are people counting on me. Because giving up is not an option. That is not a strategy, Nari said. That is just stubbornness. Maybe, Daeho agreed. But stubbornness kept humanity alive when we lived in caves and hunted with sticks. Stubbornness got us to space even though we are slow and weak. Stubbornness is what we are good at. Nari's crystalline form shifted through colors, emotions Daeho could not read. I have watched you fight. You take damage that would kill others. You push through pain that would break stronger species. Why? Your Highness, Daeho said quietly. Have you ever had to fight for anything? Really fight, not knowing if you would succeed? The question hung in the air. Nari was silent for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. My life has been predetermined. My education, my duties, even this marriage. The tournament is a formality. The strongest wins, and I accept the result. I have never chosen anything for myself. Then you understand, Daeho said. This tournament is the first choice I have ever really had. Back in the colonies, there were no choices. You worked or you died, you followed orders or you were punished. This is the first time I am fighting for something I chose. And what did you choose? Nari asked. What are you really fighting for? Freedom, Daeho answered. For my people, for my sister, for children who deserve better than what we were given. He paused. And maybe, a little bit, to prove that humans are not just labor units, that we are worth something. Nari reached out slowly, her crystalline hand hovering near his scarred one. You have already proven that. The entire galaxy is watching. They see what I see. And what do you see? Daeho asked. Someone who will not surrender. Not to superior force, not to impossible odds, not to the way things have always been. Her hand finally touched his, cool and smooth against his rough skin. Someone who makes me question everything I thought I knew about strength. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then, Nari withdrew her hand and moved toward the door. She paused at the threshold. Your final opponent will be Commander Roktan. He has never lost a battle. He is considered unbeatable. I know, Daeho said. Can you defeat him? She asked. Daeho smiled, though it hurt his split lip. I will find a way. I always do. After she left, Daeho finished tending his wounds and lay back on the medical bed. Tomorrow was the final battle. Win, and he could change everything. Lose, and it would all have been for nothing. He thought of home, of his sister's message, of the children in the mines. He thought of Princess Nari's words, the way she had looked at him. Then he closed his eyes and rested, gathering his strength for the hardest fight of his life. The day of the final match arrived with storm clouds gathering over Velthar Prime. Lightning cracked across the purple sky as if the planet itself anticipated the coming battle. Every seat in the grand arena was filled, with billions more watching from across the galaxy. Daeho spent the morning in quiet preparation. He reviewed every piece of footage he could find on Commander Roktan. The Roktar were silicon-based lifeforms, their bodies composed of living stone. Roktan stood 10 feet tall, weighed over half a ton, and had commanded the Imperium's shock troops for 30 years. In all that time, he had never been defeated in single combat. The footage showed Roktan's fighting style, overwhelming force applied with military precision. He crushed opponents quickly and efficiently. Most of his matches lasted less than 3 minutes. Against his stone body, conventional weapons shattered like glass. But Daeho noticed something in the old recordings, something others might have missed. Roktan had never fought a long battle. Every engagement was brief, decisive, and brutal. The commander had built his entire reputation on swift victories. What happened when swift victory was not possible? The preparation chamber felt smaller than usual as Daeho wrapped his hands, checking his simple fighting wraps for the last time. He wore no armor, carried no weapons, just flesh and bone against living stone. A knock at the door. Princess Nari entered, again without attendance. This had become their pattern over the past weeks, these quiet moments before each match. The betting markets say you have no chance, she said softly. They have said that before, Daeho replied, not looking up from his preparations. This is different. Roktan is not like the others. His body is nearly indestructible. How can flesh defeat stone? Daeho finally met her eyes. Over the weeks, he had learned to read the color shifts in her crystalline form. Right now, she showed deep blue, the color of concern. "Your Highness, may I ask you a question?" he said. "Of course." "Why do you care if I win or lose? The tournament serves its purpose regardless. You will marry the victor, as tradition demands." Nari was silent for a long moment. Colors rippled through her body, emotions she struggled to control. "Because," she finally said, "you made me realize that tradition is not the same as right. For the first time in my life, I want someone specific to win, not because tradition demands it, but because I choose it." Daeho stood, moving closer to her. "Then I will try not to disappoint you." "Do not die," Nari said, and there was something raw in her voice. "Whatever happens, do not die." "I will do my best," Daeho promised. The crowd's roar shook the arena as Daeho walked onto the sand. Across from him, Commander Roktan emerged, and the sight was terrifying. The Roktar commander was a mountain of living stone, his body composed of interlocking silicon plates that shifted and moved like tectonic forces. His eyes glowed with inner heat, and each step left deep impressions in the arena floor. The announcer's voice boomed. The final match of the Tournament of Ascension, Commander Roktan, the Unbreakable Wall, versus Daeho, the Human Survivor. The crowd was evenly divided now. Half still believed in Roktan's invincibility. The other half had seen Daeho achieve the impossible too many times to discount him. Roktan's voice rumbled like grinding boulders. "You have fought well to reach this point, human. I respect your perseverance. But this ends now. I will make it quick." "Thank you for the consideration," Daeho replied, "but I would prefer it slow." Confusion flickered across Roktan's stone features. Then the bell rang. The commander charged, and the impact when he moved was like a landslide. Daeho dove aside, feeling the displacement of air as Roktan's stone fist passed inches from his head. The punch struck the arena wall, leaving a crater in the reinforced material. This was going to be different from any fight before. Daeho could not hurt Roktan. That was simply a fact. His strikes, which had worn down other opponents, would be meaningless against living stone. He could not outlast Roktan through attrition, as he had with Talvor. The Roktar did not tire in any conventional sense. But Daeho had noticed something in the footage, and now he would test his theory. He ran, not in circles like before, but in a complex pattern, forcing Roktan to constantly change direction, to accelerate and decelerate, to move his massive weight in ways that required effort. The crowd booed at first, seeing it as cowardice, but Daeho ignored them. He was fighting his own battle, playing his own strategy. Roktan pursued with military efficiency, but Daeho was faster, more agile. Every time the commander closed in, Daeho slipped away, making Roktan work for every attempted strike. 5 minutes passed. 10, 20. The arena's environmental systems kept the temperature comfortable for spectators, but down on the sand, under the lights, and with constant exertion, it was hot. Daeho was sweating heavily, his human body's cooling system working overtime. Roktan showed no signs of fatigue, but Daeho noticed something. The commander's movements were generating heat. With each powerful strike, each acceleration of his massive frame, friction built up within his silicon structure. Heat that had nowhere to go. 30 minutes in, Daeho increased the pace. He began striking at Roktan, not to cause damage, but to make the commander work harder. Each attack forced Roktan to respond, to move, to generate more internal heat. The crowd had stopped booing. They watched in growing fascination as the human refused to engage directly, instead conducting a battle of movement and endurance. 1 hour passed, the longest tournament match in recorded history. Roktan's stone body began to glow faintly, heat radiating from within. The commander's breathing, which silicon-based life did not require but used for cooling, came faster and harsher. Daeho was exhausted, his legs trembling, his lungs burning. But he had been exhausted before. He knew how to function past the point where his body screamed for rest. He had lived his entire life past that point. At 90 minutes, something changed. A small crack appeared in Roktan's shoulder joint, barely visible. Thermal stress fracture. The commander noticed it too. For the first time in 30 years of combat, Commander Roktan felt something he had never experienced before. Vulnerability? He charged at Deho with desperate fury, trying to end this before his body betrayed him further. But Deho had been waiting for desperation. Desperate opponents made mistakes. Roktan overextended on a strike. Deho did not dodge. Instead, he stepped inside the commander's reach and struck at the shoulder fracture with everything he had left. The crack widened. Not much, but enough. Roktan roared, a sound like mountains crumbling. He swung wildly, catching Deho across the chest and sending him flying. Deho hit the arena wall hard, feeling ribs crack, but rolled to his feet through sheer force of will. 2 hours. The crowd watched in absolute silence now, witnessing something that should be impossible. More cracks appeared across Roktan's body. His silicon structure, designed for brief explosive combat, was failing under sustained exertion. The internal heat, with nowhere to dissipate, was destroying him from within. The commander looked at his fracturing hands in disbelief. He had won hundreds of battles. He was the unbreakable wall. How could he be defeated by a soft, fragile human? Deho stood across from him, barely able to breathe, covered in bruises and blood. But still standing, still fighting. "You were designed for war," Deho said, his voice rough. "Quick battles, decisive victories. But you were never tested against someone who refused to let you win quickly." He spat blood onto the sand. "Humans, we do not win through strength. We win by surviving until our enemies cannot." Roktan looked at this small, damaged creature who had done the impossible. In Deho's eyes, the commander saw no mockery, no triumph, only respect and exhaustion. The commander thought of his military career, of his honor, of the warriors he had led. He had always taught them that knowing when to retreat was as important as knowing when to attack. That wisdom meant recognizing reality. "I yield," Roktan said, his voice like grinding stone. The arena exploded into chaos. The impossible had happened. The human had won. Deho tried to respond, tried to acknowledge the surrender, but his body finally gave out. He collapsed onto the sand, consciousness fading. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Princess Nari's crystalline form racing from the imperial box, her royal dignity forgotten as she ran toward him. Then nothing but peaceful darkness and the knowledge that he had won. Deho woke to soft light and the hum of medical equipment. His entire body ached with a deep, bone-level pain that told him he had pushed far past his limits. As his eyes focused, he saw Princess Nari sitting beside his bed, her crystalline form shifting through gentle colors. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. 3 days, Nari replied. "The medical team said you had 14 fractures, severe internal bruising, and complete physical exhaustion. They wanted to use advanced regeneration, but I told them you would prefer to heal naturally." Deho smiled despite the pain. She had understood. "Thank you." "The galaxy has been in chaos since your victory," Nari said. "Human stocks have surged across all markets. Your people in the colonies are being contacted for diplomatic negotiations. Ships are arriving daily requesting trade agreements with humanity." She paused. "You changed everything in 2 hours." "Did Commander Roktan recover?" Deho asked. "Yes. His body has regenerated from the thermal stress. He asked to speak with you when you wake." Nari's colors shifted to something that might have been amusement. "He wants to offer you a position training his troops in endurance combat." Deho laughed, then winced as his ribs protested. "I would like that. He fought with honor." Nari stood and moved to the window, looking out over the city. "We need to discuss the tournament results. By law and tradition, you have won my hand in marriage and governorship of a sector." "I know," Deho said quietly. Nari turned to face him, her colors shifting rapidly through the spectrum. "But I want to offer you a choice. You fought for freedom, Deho. I will not make your prize into a new prison." She approached his bed, her voice soft but steady. "I will declare the tournament void. You will still receive the governorship, still have the power to free your people. but you will not be bound to marry me. Daeho studied her carefully. Over the past weeks, through their quiet conversations before each match, he had come to know the person behind the crystalline facade. A woman who questioned tradition, who sought meaning beyond duty, who cared about right and wrong more than power and status. "What do you want, Nari?" he asked, using her name without title for the first time. Her colors stilled to a deep violet. "I want to choose. For the first time in my life, I want to make a decision that is mine alone, not dictated by law or tradition or political necessity." "Then choose," Daeho said. "I choose you," Nari replied. "Not because tradition demands it, not because you won a tournament, but because you showed me what it means to fight for something you believe in. Because you made me want to be more than just a symbol." She moved closer. "But I will not keep you in a cage of obligation. So I offer you the same choice. What do you want?" Daeho considered her words carefully. He thought about his original plan. Win the tournament, free his people, return to a simple life. But that was before he had gotten to know Nari. Before he had seen her question everything she had been taught. Before he had recognized in her a kindred spirit also fighting for freedom. "I accept the marriage," he said finally. "Not as a prize, but as a partnership. We can rewrite the rules together, create something new from old traditions." Nari's entire form blazed with golden light, joy radiating from her. "Together," she agreed. The next weeks were filled with negotiations and planning. Daeho's first act as prospective governor was to draft the Accords of Partnership, a document that would reshape human-imperium relations. He demanded full citizenship for all humans, immediate cessation of forced labor practices, and integration of human personnel into all levels of imperial society. In return, he offered human expertise in endurance operations, survival training, and the kind of stubborn problem-solving that came naturally to a species that had clawed its way to the stars against all odds. Princess Nari worked alongside him, using her political influence to push the accords through the Imperial Council. Together, they formed an effective team, his practical experience with her political knowledge, his determination with her diplomatic skill. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for the first day of the new cycle, a massive event that would be broadcast across the galaxy. The night before, as final preparations were being made, Daeho walked through the palace gardens with Nari. "Some of my people see this as collaboration with oppressors," Daeho admitted. "They wanted complete separation, not integration." "And some of mine see it as degrading our bloodline," Nari replied. "They cannot imagine why I would choose a human when I could have had perfect Illurian genetics or Rocktar strength." "Are we making a mistake?" Daeho asked. Nari took his hand, her crystalline fingers intertwining with his scarred ones. "No. We are making a choice. That is what matters." The wedding ceremony began at dawn. Representatives from every major species in the Imperium attended, some out of genuine support, others out of political necessity. Daeho wore simple formal clothes from Earth, refusing the elaborate alien garments that had been offered. Nari's crystalline form was draped in traditional Vreltan ceremonial silks that reflected every color of the spectrum. As they stood before the master of ceremonies, the ancient Vreltan spoke the traditional words of binding. But when it came time for the couple to speak their vows, they broke from tradition. "I vow to stand with you," Daeho said, "not as prize or possession, but as partner and equal, to build something new from old traditions. To never stop fighting for what we believe is right." "I vow to choose you," Nari replied, "every day, as I choose today. To question what should be questioned, to change what should be changed, and to stand firm on what truly matters." The ceremony was interrupted by sudden chaos. Energy weapons fire erupted from the upper galleries. Talvor, the Illurian prince Daeho had defeated, appeared with a group of armed supporters. "This union is an abomination," Talvor shouted, his perfect features twisted with rage. "It degrades everything our species have built. The humans should have died in the arena as nature intended." Security forces moved to respond, but Talvor's group had positioned themselves strategically. The attackers wore combat armor and carried military-grade weapons. Daiho and Nari reacted instantly, moving in perfect synchronization. They had trained together over the past weeks, learning to fight as a unit. Nari's crystalline body could refract energy weapons, creating defensive barriers. Daiho's tactical mind found weaknesses in the attacker's formation. The battle was brief but intense. Working together, they neutralized Talvor's group without killing anyone. When it ended, Talvor knelt on the floor, disarmed and defeated, staring at the couple in disbelief. "You were right," Daiho said to him, not unkindly. "On paper, you should have beaten me. Your genetics are superior, but you forgot that strength is not just about physical perfection." He helped Nari to her feet, her crystalline hand warm in his. "Real strength is finding the person who makes you better together than you could ever be apart." Talvor was taken into custody. The ceremony continued, now with additional layers of security, but also with a deeper understanding among the attendees. They had seen the human and the princess fight together, protecting their choice with the same determination Daiho had shown in the tournament. 1 year later, Daiho stood in the governor's office of the Terran sector, looking at reports from across human space. The colonies were free. Children attended schools instead of mines. Families lived together instead of being separated by labor assignments. It was not perfect, but it was better. Nari entered the office, carrying data tablets showing the latest integration statistics. Human soldiers were serving in mixed units with other species, not as cannon fodder, but as specialists in endurance operations. Human engineers were developing new technologies, combining their creative problem-solving with alien scientific knowledge. "The Council approved our proposal for the Academy of Persistence," Nari said, her colors shifting to pleased green. "Human instructors will train warriors from all species in endurance combat and survival skills." "Commander Roktan will be pleased," Daiho replied. "He has been asking for this since he recovered." Nari moved to stand beside him at the window. Below, in the plaza, they could see a mixed crowd of species going about their daily business. Humans walked alongside Vreltan, Roktar, and others, not as servants but as equals. "Do you ever regret it?" Nari asked. "You could have taken your freedom and left. Started fresh somewhere else." Daiho turned to look at her, this being of crystalline beauty who had chosen to question everything she was taught, who had learned to fight not with perfection but with determination, who had become his partner in ways he never imagined. "I did take my freedom," he said. "I chose what to do with it, just like you did." She moved closer, resting her crystalline head against his shoulder, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The galaxy thought the tournament was about proving strength through victory. But it was really about something else, Daiho finished, about enduring long enough to build something better. About choosing your own path even when everyone says it is impossible. Through the window, they watched human children playing in the plaza with alien children, learning together, growing together. The old barriers were not gone, but they were crumbling. It would take time, generations perhaps, but change had begun. That evening, Daiho received a message from his sister on Titan. She had enrolled in the new engineering academy, studying alongside students from a dozen species. The message was simple. "Thank you for not giving up, big brother. Look at what you made possible." He showed the message to Nari, and her entire form glowed with warm colors. "You know what the best part is?" Daiho said. "We are just getting started." Nari's laughter sounded like crystal chimes in harmony. "Then I suppose we should get to work? We have a galaxy to change." Together, they returned to their planning. Two beings from different worlds who had chosen each other, who had fought for that choice, and who would continue fighting for a future where choice mattered more than tradition, where partnership mattered more than perfection, and where the galaxy learned that sometimes the weakest-seeming species had the strongest will. Outside their window, the sun set over Velthar Prime, painting the sky in colors that reminded Daiho of home. He had come to this world as a desperate fighter from the colonies, someone the galaxy dismissed as weak and primitive. He remained as a governor, a husband, and most importantly, as someone who had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not in matching the perfection of others, but in refusing to quit until they had built something worth having. The tournament had ended, but their real work had only just begun.